The biggest thing that men can do to prevent insulin resistance or potential diabetes is becoming more and more clear. See, we used to think that it was mainly muscle mass, and it still is, but there's another factor that we've been sort of missing. Now, when you look at the idea of muscle mass, like as men get older, their muscle mass tends to decline. But when you start looking at the data more, you realize that it's declining for a couple of reasons. For one, probably using less of the muscle, probably working out less, probably more sedentary, probably have more stress, which is potentially catabolizing muscle. They're probably getting less sleep, which is probably catabolizing muscle. But you know what all of these things also do? They reduce testosterone. And we're starting to see some interesting evidence in men that testosterone plays a role in the expression of the genes that are associated with glucose uptake. What does that mean in human terms? In English, it means that testosterone might be a very big regulator of how our body sucks glucose into a cell. And if a glucose molecule isn't getting sucked into a cell, it's floating through the bloodstream, contributing to insulin resistance. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more. If you look at a study published in the journal Endocrine Connections, it was interesting because it took a look at 13 different studies with over 16,000 participants overall. Okay, and they found that there was a bidirectional relationship between low testosterone and insulin resistance. What that means when it's bidirectional is it means they find it both ways. Low testosterone equaled higher insulin resistance. But higher insulin resistance also seemed to cause low testosterone. You see, they work in these loops together. When insulin resistance is prevalent, then it could be leading to less testosterone production. Now, we have to look at a lot of different things here because this is somewhat correlational. And this is where we start to see the research that testosterone may regulate what is called the expression of GLUT4. Now, GLUT4 is like a giant fishing net that a cell casts into our bloodstream to catch glucose and bring it in. Okay? The more fishing nets that we have, the more glucose we can catch and pull into the cell. Remember, if that glucose is not going into the cell, it's circulating through the bloodstream and it ultimately ends up reaching the liver, where it ultimately might get repackaged through de novo lipogenesis into fat. Okay, so there's an indirect relationship here with fat accumulation too. The more fat that we accumulate, the more lipids we have circulating through the bloodstream, which causes more insulin resistance. So you see this vicious circle that could be rooted in lower levels of testosterone that we're seeing in men. Like over the ages of 35, testosterone levels just start to plummet. So when you have less gene expression of GLUT4, that means at a genetic level, you have less being coded for the production of GLUT4. So you're literally producing less GLUT4, which means you have less fishing nets to cast into the sea. Now, the other thing is when you look at rodent model studies, you see interesting stuff. You see that when they do what is called a knockout of the androgen receptor, that means they take where testosterone would bind to and they knock it out. They find that those mice end up having significantly worse levels of obesity. Interesting. But when the androgen receptor is working, there's less instances of obesity, indicating that testosterone is playing a role in our overall body composition, which probably isn't surprising. But again, this ties in with insulin resistance too. Let's talk about a few ways that you can improve testosterone over the age of 40. And then let's talk about some dietary things that you can do to not only improve testosterone, but improve the insulin resistance that might help your testosterone. So there are increasing bodies of evidence looking at ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is a very inexpensive adaptogenic compound that might work really well for improving testosterone. Although a lot of the research is done in rodent models, but we're starting to see some more observational stuff in humans. Then we have Tongkat Ali. Now, Tongkat Ali has been talked about myself on this channel. In fact, I popped the link right there. So if you click on the little tab at the top of the screen, the thumbnail looks like this. You can check out video. Also, Dr. Andrew Huberman, More Plates, More Dates. Derek, he's talked about it a lot. It's a very talked about compound that does have some really potent potential. The other thing that you can do is you can try taking 25 to 50 milligrams of DHEA. Okay, that's a powerful compound. Now we're also seeing evidence that alcohol decreases testicular output. So if we're consuming a bunch of alcohol, that could absolutely be affecting testosterone. It can also influence estrogen production, where you're having too much estrogen and not enough testosterone, throwing off the entire cycle here. So those things are very important. Obviously, improving sleep is good for testosterone too, but those are very direct and clear ways that you can improve things. And if you end up going so far to the point where you need testosterone replacement or HCG or anything like that, that becomes a real thing too. But let's talk diet for just a second. One of the things that I think people forget is that if you are already insulin resistant, you are impeding testosterone function. So reducing carbohydrates, increasing fat content, doing a modified ketogenic style approach, that might be a good approach for you to go to as well. I popped a link for some of my videos on how to start a ketogenic diet as well, if that's an area of interest for you. Not saying it's a must, but it might really help you out. So I popped that link down in the description, but you can also click on the little button that's popping up right there. If you do start a ketogenic diet or you just try to reduce sugar, which could have a big impact too, I want you to check out Perfect Keto. They have some really cool food options for when you're just starting keto. They have collagen, they have really good, they call it Mallow Munch. They're like Rice Krispie treats that are totally ketogenic friendly and they have nothing weird in them. They're not crazy, they're not full of artificial stuff. They also have really good keto bars that don't have any sugar alcohols in them. They have different whey proteins for keto, like meal replacement type things. Really, really delicious stuff. So if you use the code that's down below in the description, top line right underneath this video, you can save a bunch of cashola, get a massive discount, and check out all the items that I recommend. They also have this thing called the Barista Blend, which is like coffee and MCT creamer. It just tastes delicious. So all that stuff, that link is down below, top line of the description. Check out their Mallow Munch, only 80 calories, couple grams of net carbs. It just makes doing a low carb lifestyle that much easier, and I think it's worth it if you're trying to make this shift to trying to improve your testosterone levels and improve insulin resistance. Now the second part of this, particularly for men, okay, if testosterone levels are lower, you're gonna struggle to build muscle. And remember that muscle is a massive, massive sink for glucose. What that means is that when you eat carbohydrates, the glucose has to go somewhere. And the first place it tries to go is to our muscle cells. And if the muscle cells reject it for whatever reason, they're full, you're insulin resistant, whatever, it goes to the liver and then cascades into a bunch of different problems. The more muscle you have and the more you move your muscle, the more you can suck up glucose. But the other side is there's bodies of research that suggest the more compound movements you do, things like squats, things like deadlifts, those are going to increase testosterone production. Now, you can't just walk into the gym and start doing squats and expect to grow a full beard. That's not how it's going to work. But if you apply the other things that I'm talking about, reducing the sugar intake if you're insulin resistant, okay, increasing the fat content, eating some eggs, eating higher fat so you can produce the cholesterol and produce the testosterone that you need, okay, alongside maybe Tongkat Ali, DHEA, some of these other exogenous things, do that along with resistance training and you're creating a nice perfect storm to be able to create what you need to increase testosterone and increase muscle mass. The cool thing is there's a study published in the Journal of Exercise Science and Fitness that found even in older adults, like upwards of 40, 50, 60, adding exercise into the mix, resistance training, massively improved HbA1c, and it was influenced particularly by intensity, especially when it came down to insulin resistance. So even just a couple days per week of intense resistance training, not super heavy, but just working hard, is going to be a big driver of improving your metabolic resilience and improving insulin resistance. Couple that with improving your testosterone, and for a guy, that's really all you could ask for. You're fixing that bidirectional approach. You're improving your insulin resistance by working the muscle and improving muscle mass, okay? But you're also fixing the testosterone by going these other avenues. And since it's bidirectional, every little bit that you improve the weight training helps on one side and the other, and every little bit that you help on the testosterone side helps on one side and the other. So it ends up being a step ladder approach to climb yourself out of that deep well of insulin resistance and low testosterone. So as always, keep locked in here on my channel. Don't forget to check out Perfect Keto down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.